Princess Celestia the Changeling Queen, Chapter 16, The Precipice. Camp Draco, a 500-year-old military base, was located just within the site from the outskirts of Baltimore. It was a place that held a great deal of sentimental value for me. Camp Draco was where I had cemented numerous treaties and celebrated countless diplomatic triumphs between griffins, dragons, horses, and diamond dogs. Sitting on a raised plateau, the base's 10-meter-thick wall of stone protected the diplomats from any interventions by third parties. Moreover, the base isolated problematic diplomats from those they may have hurt and those that wished to hurt them. The final reason for why I had chosen Draco was that it was neatly located between Baltimore and Chrysalis' hive, which meant it was in neutral ground. I grimaced, despite being perfectly poised at the end of the camp's parade ground, watching the main gates and backed by a squad of royal guards. Even now I was outraged that some pony had attacked a changeling bearing a flag of truce. I wasn't sure if my indignation stemmed from horror at Lamy's injuries or because it was this incident that had led to my sister attacking Canterlot, which had caused so much distress for myself and my ponies. Exasperated at the actions of the foolish perpetrator of the attack, my mind turned its attention to the impending trial that I was about to undertake. The paralyzing fear that I had for my sister had somewhat lessened, but I was highly apprehensive of her motives, and I knew I couldn't let my guard down. Yet maybe it was after meeting her that I realized that she was just still a changeling queen, and not the specter that haunted my memories. Every time Chrysalis' name was mentioned, I couldn't stop recalling my mother's death. There was no doubt that Chrysalis would sense my suspicion, but there was nothing I could do to change it. Despite being distracted by my thoughts, I noticed a pair of worried violet eyes gazing up at me, so I turned left and smiled.
No need to worry about me, Cadence. I must ask though, are you sure about facing Chrysalis again?
My knees shivered as if Chrysalis' name had summoned a chilly breeze. Her brow twisted with worry.
I don't know. Chrysalis showed me in the caves after all, but I just feel so sad for what happened.
I shushed Cadence before she could finish her sentence.
That's all right, my niece. Just remember that this knowledge is something that no pony must know, as of yet.
I warned. In order to prevent the perpetrator from escaping, I only included Cadence, my chief diplomatic representative, outside of those who already knew about what happened to Lamia. I did trust Shining Armor, but I didn't think that this was the time to inform my captain that there was a magic-blasting happy pony who had started this entire debacle in our army. And some might ask, and Shining Armor certainly did demand to know, why I chose Cadence to help me with this conference. Well, I had many reasons. One of them was that I could trust Cadence with any sensitive information about the changelings without having to hide my own identity. Moreover, despite a common belief that Cadence was a frivolous filly with a talent in matchmaking, I knew better. Cadence was an exceptional diplomat whom I trained personally and had written treaties that older negotiators would applaud.
How is thy husband?
Inquired Luna. The Princess of the Night stood to my right, resplendent in her regalia. Confidence and anticipation exuded from every fiber of her body. Luna had made no attempt to hide her enthusiasm for the upcoming peace conference. It would be the first time to sit at a negotiation table since her banishment. Beside her was Blueblood. Officially, he was the representative of the Equestrian Parliament and House of Lords, but in reality, I needed him to help me anticipate the political response to the solutions that we were going to create in this conference. I also needed him to help me figure out how we were going to implement the conference's resolutions into equestrian law. Cadence sighed.
He's thrown himself into fortifying the camp, and while we still love each other just as much as our wedding day, he keeps avoiding the subject.
I nodded, just as I suspected. My captain's feelings for Chrysalis were too hostile to inform him of this new development. Not that I blamed him, I had a far greater grudge against my sister than Shining did.
He'll come around. And here they are.
I murmured as I noticed guards' ponies begin to rush back and forth across the top gates. I took a deep breath, ready to meet my sister once more. Chrysalis braced herself against the ground as the camp's ironclad gates began to slowly swing open. She had never felt more vulnerable in her life. Although she was accompanied by her Black Guard, composed of 100 veteran chevaliers that she would entrust her life to, Chrysalis was terrified of taking another step forward. Oh, Chrysalis could deal with Celestia. The nerve-wracking puzzle that was the Alicorn would be solved in time, and Chrysalis was sure that until then she could hold her own on the negotiation table. Neither was Chrysalis worried about walking into the camp itself. She had accepted that the only chance for her hive's salvation was to meet with Celestia and Luna.
Mother?
Whispered Lamia. As Chrysalis' gaze momentarily focused on her daughter, the queen couldn't help but feel slightly exasperated. Lamia had refused to lean on a guard or be shielded by chevaliers. Instead, she had demanded to stand next to her mother and accompany her during the conference. Her daughter's persistence to endanger herself had aggravated Chrysalis to no end. She had enough to be stressed about without needing to worry about her crippled daughter's well-being.
Mother, I can take care of myself,
said a quiet voice. Chrysalis blinked and gulped at her daughter's quiet, accusing stare. The narrowed eyelids dared the elder changeling to deny her doubt, and yet Chrysalis didn't. She had promised long ago to never lie to any of her daughters.
Lamia. Mother, you have a duty to our hive. Don't ruin it because of me,
said Lamia. From the outside, Lamia appeared to stand defiantly on her 3 legs, but Chrysalis sensed her daughter's fear and anxiety bound by iron control. A fierce burning pride at her daughter's courage drew a smile across the queen's features.
Let's go.
Chrysalis proudly strode forward into the now open gates, her daughter keeping in step beside her. Behind them were their black guard chevaliers in dark blue armor and bearing an assortment of warhammers, polearms, and flails. As Chrysalis stepped onto the camp's parade ground, she had to fight to suppress her fear and grudging admiration. The parade ground was lined with guards. On her left was a platoon of royal guards, and on her right, another of night guard. They formed an armored corridor to the awaiting princesses.
Oh yes, the princesses.
Chrysalis had to force herself to step forward towards the 3 alicorns. She had expected Princess Celestia and her sister. They were, after all, Equestria's rulers and had every right to be here. But she didn't expect Princess Cadence. If anything, the changeling expected the pink alicorn to have a massive grudge against her. But then again, Chrysalis's infiltrators had brought back enough stories to cement Cadence's reputation as a skilled diplomat. Chrysalis had heard that the alicorn, against all odds, managed to negotiate a 10-year trade treaty with the infamously territorial Griffins. So it would be foolish for Celestia not to call on such a skilled member of her diplomatic staff. As Chrysalis drew closer, her keen eyes took note of another figure that she didn't anticipate. To Luna's right was Prince Blueblood. Chrysalis didn't frown, merely wondered why a frivolous prince would be a part of Celestia's own entourage. The changeling had been so immersed in thought that she was surprised to realize that she was mere steps away from the princesses. Gracefully, Chrysalis halted in front of Equestria's rulers and inclined her head slightly, out of respect, and although she wouldn't deny it, out of fear. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw her daughter do the same, albeit with a little more difficulty. The Equestrian diplomats and heads of state reciprocated that slight bow, albeit Cadence did so rather stiffly.
Welcome to Camp Draco, Queen Chrysalis,
spoke Luna regally. Chrysalis regarded the alicorn warily, for she was no stranger to the reputation of a nightmare moon. It was thanks to the great fear that Equestria had been thrust into by the aftermath of the Eternal Night that Chrysalis's infant hive, already brutalized by the battle against her sister, had almost starved to death. It was also one of the multitude of reasons Chrysalis had decided to abandon the hive in the Everfree Forest. Yet Chrysalis felt less suspicious of Luna than of her sister. The changeling was still tensed, but she realized that she wasn't so scared of the younger alicorn. It was true that Luna was wary and her emotions spoke of her cautious state of mind, but they were more open. She was not trying to control or suppress her feelings.
Thank you for accommodating us, your majesties,
said Chrysalis formally. There was a click, and Chrysalis's eyes glanced to her right to see several reporters with cameras taking pictures from behind the wall of the guards.
My apologies for the reporters, but you must admit this is a historic occasion,
said Celestia, a mischievous tone in her voice. Chrysalis grimaced, but curled her lips into a snicker.
Then it is good that I'm looking my best,
chuckled Chrysalis before she suddenly snarled at the reporters, her fangs bared. The cowards promptly scattered, and even the guards' ponies flinched slightly. Chrysalis thought that she got a hint of a reproving glare from Celestia.
Agreed. Now, Prince Blueblood and Captain Shining Armor will show the majority of your chevaliers to their accommodations. Queen Chrysalis, Lady Lamia, please take a small escort and follow us to the conference chamber, said
Celestia. The 3 alicorns proceeded to turn on their hooves and trot down the parade grounds. With a nod to Chevalier Diamondshell, Chrysalis gestured Lamia to follow her, as well as other chevaliers, and the group quickly caught up to the alicorns.
How is your darling husband, Princess Cadence?
Asked Chrysalis as neutrally as she could. She wasn't surprised at the anger that sparked in Cadence, and she also expected the resentment in Celestia to rise. But once again, she was taken aback by how furious the alicorn was. Still, to the pair's credit, they said absolutely nothing, but stoically kept trotting forward.
You don't give your husband enough credit. I don't know how much he remembers from being hypnotized, but he fought my control quite frequently, admitted
Chrysalis. Cadence stopped quite suddenly and spun around. Chrysalis blinked as Cadence's haunted glare bore down on her. If the emotional turmoil within the youngest alicorn wasn't already apparent, the heaving breath, the fear mixed with anger, and the relief that Chrysalis could sense would have told her.
Did you...
Cadence couldn't force the words out of her mouth, but Chrysalis guessed what the alicorn wished to ask.
I did not steal your husband before you did. Most stallions would have been willing to concede to my persuasions, yet it appears that Captain Armor made some vow to his parents and to you when he was younger. A vow that he kept, despite my best attempts to persuade him.
Chrysalis chuckled ruefully.
Must have been some vow.
At Chrysalis's confession, Cadence's features eased into a graceful smile.
Thank you for telling me this,
said Cadence. Chrysalis raised an eyebrow in amusement, as the alicorn gave a short bow and continued to walk as if nothing had gone amiss. Luna followed, and Celestia, after a momentary, almost contemplative pause, did so as well. Chrysalis did notice a slight spring in Cadence's step, and she wasn't the only one.
Perhaps you should get in the habit of telling the truth more often, Mother,
thought spoke Lamia, amusement clear in her message. Chrysalis snorted inwardly, but couldn't help but wonder about her daughter's suggestion. Maybe she should tell the truth more often. It certainly seemed to make some ponies happy. Everything seems relatively calm and cool for now, which is good. Let's just hope that no one throws a spear at someone's forehead in frustration or anger. Now let's get on to our sharp donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, Crazy Killer 557, Stu Hex, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hadge, RuneScythe 9852, Leslie Prickett, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, Line God 12, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.